All right, I want to go to this clip from Noam Chomsky before we go into the fun half. Micah played this on the member show the other day, and it's worth playing on the free show because for two reasons. One, this is a great description of what politics really are. A, and B, how someone whose politics couldn't be further from Hillary Clinton, at least in the context of this country, I think, but makes a decision to vote in a pragmatic and practical way and makes it clear that voting is not about self-expression. All right, here he is, Noam Chomsky on with Amy Goodman.
His latest book, Who Rules the World? So that's an interesting question for 2016, since the President of the United States occupies a very powerful role in the world, Noam. Who do you support?
Well, before answering that, let me just make one comment on elections. They're important. It does matter who sits in the White House, who appoints Supreme Court justices, who makes decisions about war and peace, about environment and so on, matters who's in Congress, matters who's in the state legislatures and so on. It matters, but it's not the main issue. We are kind of indoctrinated here into focusing all of our attention on energy, on what button we push on in November every couple of years, which is not insignificant, but not the main issue. The main issue, what are the forces, domestic forces that are pressuring, acting to determine the kind of the choices that will be made, legislation will be passed, and so on.
All right, so just to be clear here, what he's saying is that, yeah, the personalities that you elect have some import. Person A versus person B is relatively important. But what's more important are the forces that they represent in the context of what they do in office. This is a subtle difference, but it is a difference between just the individual and the forces that have access and the ability to move that individual when they're in office, right? I mean, because this is a guy who's not only to the left of Hillary Clinton, but to the left of Bernie Sanders, at least where Bernie Sanders is in his public life. I have no idea where he is privately, and I would imagine he's definitely to the left of Hillary Clinton, both publicly and privately. So this is the fundamental point that Chomsky's making here.
Now, of course, there's one force that's always going to be there: private, concentrated capital, corporate power, lobbyists, corporate lawyers, and so on, writing the legislations. They're always funding the elections. They'll always be there. The question is there going to be a countervailing force? Is there going to be a force representing popular interests, needs, and concerns, defending themselves against what in fact is standard class-based assault against them? And now elections can be used as a way of galvanizing and mobilizing the kinds of groups which could become persistent, dedicated, growing, constant forces that influence significantly what's done in the White House and Congress. The New Deal legislation of Roosevelt, for example, wouldn't have been passed, it wouldn't have even been initiated without militant labor action and other political action. And those are lessons to remember. But now going back to who should you push the button for? Well, my own...
Pause it. So before we get to who we should push the button for, he's saying that corporate powers will always be there. And that's regardless of whether or not it's Hillary or Bernie or Trump or Paul Ryan or Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. These corporate forces are not going to go away. There's no way that Bernie Sanders gets into office and outlaws corporations. And even if he gets to appoint the next 2, 3 Supreme Court justices, they're never going to outlaw corporations. Can they diminish the power of corporations? Perhaps. But ultimately, it's going to be outside forces that must be persistent. In other words, this is an ongoing fight. Part of what I think is frustrating to me about the whole Bernie or bust thing is this notion that all we got to do is get Bernie in office. And then we're done. It's fixed, man. No, this is just an ongoing fight. It's an ongoing fight. And the point is, how do you just get enough so that you can, on different issues, you can push back against that always present corporate moneyed establishment force, whatever you want to call that. All right, let's get to his pick.
In the primaries, I would prefer Bernie Sanders. If Clinton is nominated and it comes to a choice between Clinton and Trump in a swing state, a state where it's going to matter which way you vote, I would vote against Trump. And by elementary arithmetic, that means you hold your nose and you vote Democrat. I don't think there's any other rational choice. Abstaining from voting, or say voting for, say, a candidate you prefer, a minority candidate, just amounts to a vote for Donald Trump, which I think is a devastating prospect for reasons I've already mentioned. So, but meanwhile, do the important things. The significance of the Sanders campaign, which is pretty remarkable, I think. It certainly surprised me. It's not radical. I mean, Sanders himself is pretty much a traditional New Deal Democrat. I don't say that in criticism. That's doesn't pretend to be anything else, and that's a breath of fresh air in the current generally right-wing climate. But the importance of it is if it can be used, this energy and enthusiasm that's been organized and mobilized can be used to develop an ongoing popular movement which will be a powerful force, no matter who's in office, to influence and direct the country in ways that are absolutely necessary, even for survival at this point. That's my view of it.
Elementary arithmetic. That means it's really elementary, and it's just math. So there's Noam Chomsky. Classic neoliberal. How would you change that name to Noam Schillerimsky? Chomsky just doesn't get it, apparently, on their YouTube notes. All right. Hello, you. I'm Sam Seder. Looking for smart progressive talk that is occasionally amusing? Well, subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to our podcast. Like us on Facebook. And just generally enjoy us.